that were very dangerous. I had this I had this belief that going to the projects and housing developments were similar to going to the mall. If I want a shirt, I know I can go to the mall. I have a number of stores that I can go to find the shirt that I want. And I can leave with a shirt. I equated that to going into housing developments and projects and just really bad neighborhoods that I knew were areas where they sold drugs. And I knew I can go in there and I would come out with something. Shopping in the projects and shopping in the mall. Same thing. What I thought. But my ideologies proved to be very warped. And I was spiraling downward very fast. And once I crossed over that line into active addiction, those warped ideologies became worse and worse and worse. Eventually, my mom did pass away again. I was 17. And I went to her funeral high. And I could remember not being present, if that makes any sense. I didn't know what I was going to do. But I did know that I wouldn't feel anything emotionally or physically if I continued to use drugs. Didn't matter that bad stuff was steadily happening and consequences upon consequences were coming at me from all different directions, negatively impacting my future. That didn't matter. That apartment that I got, I was evicted from as a result of me using drugs and alcohol. And I eventually started getting kicked out of all of my apartments that I would ever get. And I noticed that getting kicked out of places was a recurring theme. And I was getting kicked out of schools and apartments and places because of the way that I was behaving. Even though it wasn't my fault that I had this untreated mental health disorder and that I couldn't stop using drugs on my own, I had to take responsibility because I wasn't saying anything to anybody. I was even getting fired consistently from jobs. And that wasn't good because I needed a source of income. And so eventually, I became homeless. I would couch surf, but I even started getting kicked out of people's houses because of the way I was behaving and the things that I was doing. The people who I started to hang out with were drug using buddies or friends, if you will, which they weren't, but they served a purpose at that particular point in time. They weren't real friends, of course, but I remember fitting in based on what I was doing. which was something I was looking for, had been looking for my whole life. But like I said, things at this point were out of control. And my back was really up against the wall. So I started to go to this adolescent day shelter, drop-in center. And I would go there because they had food and groups, and you could do your laundry there, and it's a place to hang out. They really weren't concerned with whether or not you did drugs or if you were getting in trouble of any kind outside of the place. And when I say they weren't concerned, I mean it didn't limit them from helping me. And I met a social worker there. And she would talk to me, find out what was going on. And there were times when I would say something. There were times when I wouldn't. There were times when I was extremely high and just spill out everything that was on my mind. And then other times when I couldn't get high and my mood was pretty crappy. And through it all, she would tell me that she saw something in me that was amazing. And she would tell me that if I ever decided to stop using drugs, that she would help me. At the time, I wasn't ready because I didn't believe her. But I would continue to go to this place because they didn't judge me based on what I was doing. And that sparked a light in my head, the little flicker of light that I had left at that time. And so I took her up on her offer because things were really, really bad. And I thought that maybe, just maybe, if I asked for help from somebody else, because she's already told me that if I want to ask her for help, she's not going to judge me. I remember going in her office one day and I had a bottle of pills. And I was so inebriated that I was fumbling in my pocket and they fell out and all over the table. And I started scooping them up and she just stood there and waited till I picked them up. And we continued talking about what I went there to talk about. It didn't faze her. She was concerned about helping me. And that was it. So I figured that if that was how she felt, maybe other people felt that way too. So again, I took her up on her offer. I ended up going to a medical detox because I had to, based on the drugs that I was on. They said that I could seize and die when I withdrew from them. So I stayed there for 6 of the 7 days. And lo and behold, I got put out because of the way that I was behaving. Because I still hadn't said anything to anyone about how I felt, which was the underlying problem. So I ended up leaving the hospital angry because I figured that I couldn't even stop using drugs. Nothing I've done so far has been successful. Maybe I'm supposed to die. Maybe I'm not supposed to be here. And I remember taking a walk on Bourbon Street, 'cause I'm from New Orleans, running into this guy and ended up going to the project and I got arrested.